Welcome to episode 325 of the Defensive Security Podcast. My name is Jerry Bell, and joining me today, as always, is Mr. Andrew Catlett.
Good evening, Mr. Bell. How are you, sir?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
I'm good. I'm, it's been a challenging month and a half, but life goes on. And
You've learned some things, I bet.
I've learned some things. For those following along who are a fan of Betty White, we planted a tree in her honor in our front yard. So that's our way of memorializing and remembering her. And, so hopefully the tree will have a long and fruitful life. And we can say, there's Betty's tree. And also the breach, which again, I work at Sales Loft and we've been in the news and I can't talk about details, but I will say it is very entertaining to me how many security vendors and thought leaders are using the incident that I'm in the middle of to advance whatever narrative and blinky box they want to sell. And I'm not saying they've got their details right, wrong, or indifferently, but it's very entertaining.
I'm sure it's all over them. But, thought leaders are going to thought lead, right? That's what
we're kind of guilty of that ourselves. So
yeah.
It's just very funny how, because I keep an eye on these things and I have all these searches set up and I just see our name popping up all the time next to, Sales Loft breach teaches us XYZ. Here's how my product would have stopped that. I'm like, given what I know is out there public, I know that there's lots of big gaps in what's currently public of the narrative. And so I'm like, how can you say that? Well, it's like, okay, I'm not going to call anybody out because I don't want to get sued, but it is just amazing.
Filled in some details, some liberties.
Yeah. I mean, they might be right. They might be wrong, but there's just, anyway, I shouldn't even be talking about this. It's just entertaining how watching the industry do its thing.
I don't envy you. That's why I'm
employed. You went through it countless times at your last gig. So everything I'm going through, you went through 100 times.
I did. So I don't have any hair. So
right. Mine is thinning rapidly. But otherwise,
for those of you who have never been through it, it's really hard to express how stressful it is. It's just so taxing.
But it is super enlightening. Like it shows you why what we do matters so viscerally. And, when you're having those conversations with your partners in the organization and they're pushing back on some requirement you're asking for or some recommendation you have. And is it really that big a deal? Does it really matter? Now, going through something like this, you can see why it does matter or why it doesn't matter, as the case may be, and what to do. And there's, yes.
That is Sir Cruzan,
who I met briefly a couple of weeks ago.
He's a cool kitty.
Yeah. My wife volunteers at a cat shelter, and she's already sending me pictures of adorable kitties that might come home in her pocket. I don't know how my remaining 2 kitties will feel about that, but
though I have Cruzan, we don't have any. My wife and I don't have any cats. Cruzan is my son's cat, and Noki is his brother, and they are living with us. But someday they'll move out, and that will be very sad because they're like family. Anyhow,
lots of kitties need a good home.
Lots of kitties, and they're awesome. They're just great. So, and that's not the toxoplasmosis talking, I promise.
Fair enough.
So, what I was going to say is, I really think that a breach scenario like this underscores something that I think a lot of us struggle with in the industry, which is that too many people look at auditors, whether it's internal auditors or compliance auditors, certification auditors, as the adversary they're trying to defend against. It isn't until you experience something like this that you really have a deep appreciation for what you're actually doing and why. Anyway, moving on. I do want to say a special thank you to our Patreon sponsors. Thank you very much. A reminder, if you do want to become a Patreon sponsor, you'll get our episodes a week before everybody else. That is so far the one big benefit we've been able to give our donors. And so just a really heartfelt, sincere thank you to all of you. Really appreciate that. You can find our Patreon page. It's patreon.com/defensivesec. It's SEC, not the other word. So get your mind out of the gutter. Also, thank you very much to everybody who has. Oh, go ahead. Go
that one might get more donations. I don't know. We should maybe open that one up too.
I should go register that. Yes.
Sorry.
Anyway, thank you to everybody who has followed our YouTube page, which is, a subtle way of saying we have a YouTube page, and we would love for you to follow it because, we are also trying to figure out ways to monetize it there as well. While Patreon is awesome, I don't want to work forever. So I'm hoping to become a Joe Rogan security trillionaire. So there you go. It's all going to be done through YouTube.
We are 0.0001% of the way there. We're on our way.
It all starts with the first step.
It is funny how many marketing emails we get about, YouTube and, and they're like, hey, you've already made your first 50 shows. That's what, 90% of people can make. I'm like, we're at 325. What algorithm are you looking at, buddy? But it's so funny how they're like,
yeah, we have your probably one of them even sent a video like, here's what's wrong with your YouTube page. I think it's okay.
What's wrong with our YouTube page is us, you and I, sir. We are not.
Well, that's true.
Attractive individuals. That's the problem.
And I'm sorry for that. But
the first two rules of being an influencer.
Be attractive, don't be unattractive.
That's why we put out an audio-only version. Anyway, hey, the thoughts and opinions we express are ours and not our employers.
I do want to say that it's probably not an accident that there are approximately 200 times more people who listen to the audio version than watch the video. So.
Wise people.
I don't think that's a coincidence. Anyway, let's get into our stories because we have bored people to tears already. So first one comes from the Register, and this one is titled, "One Line of Malicious NPM Code Led to Massive Postmark Email Heist," which I feel like that title is taking some liberties maybe because they don't really know exactly how many emails were stolen. But anyway, Postmark is a company who, as one might guess based on their name, they provide mail delivery services, and they have a MCP, a Model Context Protocol capability and code that interfaces with their service available on GitHub. But some enterprising bad guy created a clone of that with a very similar name and posted it to the NPM repository with a very, very slight change. That change was that it BCC'd an email address that the adversary or the attacker or bad guy, whatever, controlled. And so anybody who used this particular package, which otherwise looked and acted like a legitimate copy of what you would expect,
and
whatever.
Interestingly enough, the bad actor had 15 versions over time that were not malicious. So he forked it, or not just copied it out to NPM and just kept copying the updates and made it look normalized and safe over 15 versions before he threw in his malicious code.
Really kind of clever. Established some reliability and credibility.
Yeah, some credibility. Yeah. Sorry, go on.
Very interesting. Anyway, it's unclear exactly how many organizations were hurt by this. There's a security company, it's called Koi, I think is how you say it, like the fish, says that there were about 1,500 downloads of this particular malicious, the version that was malicious in the week that it was available. And they're saying that it was integrated in hundreds of developer workflows and likely stole thousands of emails every day before it was removed. It's hard to say what kind of data would have been stolen, but a lot of this stuff was intended to be run on your own infrastructure, and therefore, you could potentially see, people sending somewhat sensitive stuff through there. So hard to say. What I thought was novel was what you talked about, which is, the way in which this bad actor established themselves as, a reliable package. They just kind of set it out there. I don't even think they advertised it. I think it was just there, and people started picking it up. And because it worked and was quote legitimate, people started using it, and then had I'm assuming it's he had an opportunity to weaponize it, and so this, I think, another challenge that we have to deal with. And I mean, it feels like every freaking time we get on this podcast, we have another new variant of some badness involving open source packages and these repositories. And I don't know what you necessarily do about this. There's a lot of discussion online about like, oh, well, haha, you should be validating your code. Like you should be downloading these and pinning version numbers, and you don't increment the version number until you've actually reviewed the code, which I think was probably not unreasonable in this particular case. But like in aggregate, some of these applications that companies build have thousands and thousands and thousands of dependencies. And while I think it is the responsible thing to do to reveal those, I don't know that that's practical.
Yeah. I think I've seen a couple of things that may help. Like I know Google and a few others have introduced like a secure repository option where it's vetted. They're doing the work for you. I don't know if anybody's abused it. I don't know how well that's been adopted by enterprises, but something like that seems like an option, some sort of curated, safe third-party dependencies. I'm sure that they probably could also be abused. The other thing I was thinking about with this article is this felt a bit like some things that we've dealt with a lot in the past, which is like typo squatting on lookalike domain names and that sort of thing. So I wonder if you're a developer, should you be out there looking for and monitoring for, or hiring a service to monitor for people trying to have similar sounding packages as yours on other repositories, or typos of your repositories, that sort of thing. It's something we dealt with for years with domain names, and maybe we need to extend that in cases like this to people trying to copy and masquerade as your repo. But that's on the developer side more than it is on the enterprise side who's utilizing these repos. It does feel like we're getting to a bit of an inflection point where these various repos are just getting hit so often. And again, it's not necessarily their fault, but their reputation is being damaged so badly by it that they even talk about in this article that GitHub, for instance, is starting to, with Jones NPM registry, it's going to start tightening security by shortening security token life cycles, switching to two-factor auth. That wouldn't have stopped any of this. This is pure just, reputation squatting, or, lookalike squatting, whatever the proper term for it is these days.
Name collision. Yep.
There you go. Name collision. There you go. I don't know. It's a tough one, but it's getting worse. And I wonder if we're getting to a point where we're going to have to take more, if these repos are going to have to take more aggressive action to protect their ecosystem.
Yeah. The only thing I could come up with, and I don't even know how you would feasibly implement this, would be some sort of a lot of social media sites, you can verify your identity. And so it's not out of the realm of reality to think that NPM and GitHub and the other repos might have a similar kind of concept where you can say, well, I am the only authoritative source of postmark repositories. I don't know how reasonable that is.
That's an interesting concept. I think it's absolutely a good idea and worth pursuing, but I also wonder if it will run afoul of the free and open source software ethos and mindset for certain folks. But, if let's say you offered it and certain developers chose to use it, certain didn't, and it's an enterprise, you could make a risk decision. Do I want to use this as a reputational marker and focus on only adopting packages from verified owners? Again, there are other ways with social engineering that we've seen that could go around that, and developer accounts have been attacked, but it's one more bar that could potentially make it harder for this particular type of attack to succeed. It's just, it's getting tricky to trust this stuff. And some would argue, hey, if you're an enterprise and there's definitely this mindset. If you're an enterprise out there building your applications on these third-party packages and you're not contributing back, and you get what you deserve, that kind of mindset I don't think is helpful, but it's certainly out there.
Yeah. And I not every malicious change is the same, right? And so one of the things I'm concerned about is we've spent collectively in the industry a lot of time and effort on building secure pipelines, and we have code. We've got SNCC, and we've got all kinds of crazy code analysis engines. But I don't have any idea if this was caught. But I'm gonna guess adding a code to CC an email address is probably not going to be perceived by most of those as malicious.
Yeah, so, I would agree.
I mean, maybe they will now.
I mean, I guess you could possibly pick it up in some sort of monitoring of email flow, but boy, that's a tough one.
Anyway, it's just a novel attack. Thought it was worth discussing. Another thing to worry about for your development team. All right, the next story comes from Bleeping Computer, and the title here is Oracle Patches EBS Zero-Day Exploited in CLOP Data Theft Attacks. And wow, this one has been a wild ride. I started following this saga, I think it was like 10 days ago, maybe a little less than 10 days ago, when CLOP started contacting companies saying, hey, we owned your Oracle eBusiness, your Oracle Financials application, and pay us money. And Oracle at the time basically said, nuh-uh. And then they came back and said, well, okay, it's real, but it's leveraging vulnerabilities that we fixed in July. And then the latest news, which happened over this past weekend, so 2 days ago, day or two ago, they said, no, actually there is a 0-day. Here's the new patch. So yeah. And by the way, it has been a long time, I feel like, since we've had a good ERP vulnerability of this magnitude. Like this is, complete unauthenticated remote code execution. It's as bad as it gets. On the other hand, I'm like, I have to ask the question, like, why do you have any aspect of your Oracle eBusiness suite exposed to the internet? Like, that just feels like...
Same reason I've got my perimeter firewalls and VPN concentrator management interface exposed to the internet, Jerry. Zero trust. They said it was okay.
That's right. Zero trust.
Everything wants to be open. Look, I need to get to it from...
Requires authentication. What more can you ask for? That's true.
It's fine. Look,
it's fine.
Zero trust, box checked. Auditors.
So... By the way, in Oracle, by the way, still has not, they released a patch, but they still have not officially tied the prior ransom notices to the vulnerability that this patch fixed. So that's still, they're still playing a little coy with that. This article actually has a copy of the email that was sent. So there was one quote in here that I thought just made the whole day, made my whole day when I read it. This is a quote from CLOP. It's a quote from the CLOP gang. Quote, soon all will become obvious that Oracle bugged up their core product, and once again the task is on CLOP to save the day.
They're helping.
Oh my gosh, they're helping.
They're just doing AppSec work for you. They're just unauthorized AppSec engineers or undocumented AppSec engineers.
Felt very Uber-ish to me.
Look, nobody got time for a proper vulnerability disclosure program.
So obviously, if you're using eBusiness, Oracle eBusiness, you gotta get on the patch. But I also would say you probably have bigger problems. And I go back to one of the challenges I've had, because I have had the unfortunate experience of running this wonderful package before. They point out in here that before you can apply the fix for the vulnerability, you got to apply this fix pack from 2023. And my experience was, nobody uses the stock Oracle Financials or Oracle eBusiness Suite. Like when you buy it and you have every intention of using it kind of straight out of the box, but you've already spent millions of dollars on it, and you find out the processes are just incompatible with your business, or the salespeople just hold too much power, or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got, you have no choice but to customize it. Well, once you start customizing it, you end up kind of locked in. And that has long been one of my major concerns with these big enterprise applications, is that they do tend to get customized. And once they're customized, a lot of times without a huge amount of investment, you're stuck. Like you're stuck on a particular version. So I don't know, maybe in the past 10 years since my last experience, Oracle's gotten way better, but like this, I didn't have a great experience. So anyway, don't expose that crap to the internet.
One thing I found really interesting was deep in the article, they talk about maybe some drama going on between different hacking groups. So some of the stuff that got released, one of which goes into a couple Python scripts that are in there. And these Python scripts are used to exploit a vulnerable eBusiness suite, either execute an arbitrary command or open a reverse shell. The IRC shared by Oracle lists the name of the exploit archive shared by scattered lapsus hunters, but it was used by the Clop gang, right? They're different groups. So they think scattered lapsus hunters originally wrote this exploit. That's kind of what they're insinuating. And so they're trying to figure out, are these two gangs working? Well, Shiny Hunters, who talks to Bleeping Computer apparently every day, says they believe a person that the hacker shared it with may have given it or sold it to Clop. So apparently this was originally, one of these exploits was originally developed by the Shiny Hunters larger group. And so this quote from Shiny Hunter says, quote, "That was my exploit, just like SAP, which was stolen by the CCP, China. And it upset me more that another one of my exploits was being exploited by another group in an unsuccessful way, so we leaked it. No hate to Clop." So apparently China's even stealing exploits from hacking groups and using them, and hacking groups don't like that. So just drama. What we need is like the Real Hackers of Los Angeles show on Bravo.
Yeah.
It could be like a spin-off of the Real Housewives series.
Absolutely.
It'd be very boring. It would be a lot of people just typing on keyboards and drinking Diet Coke, but maybe we could punch it up. Maybe there could be like an occasional power outage that causes a crisis, or somebody steals an exploit.
They would have to. They would have to inject some drama.
I mean,
absolutely.
They couldn't use the normal format of Real Housewives, because that's a lot of like really pretty people doing pretty people things. That doesn't apply to hackers typically.
I would guess not.
I'm not saying. Some of them, I'm sure, are very attractive people, mostly.
Anyway, moving on. Our next story comes from Bleeping Computer, and the title here is WestJet Data Breach Exposes Travel Details of 1.2 million customers.
They just went flying out the door.
Damn, man. That was pretty good. So,
a lot of baggage on this story.
Which is, you can tell he's a pilot. How can you tell he's a pilot?
I'll tell you. Within the first 5 minutes.
Anyway.
The story's clear, direct to your ears. All right, I'll stop. Sorry.
What a plane crash. So let's try that again. So this story is about a airline named WestJet. I think they're a Canadian airline, if memory serves. What is interesting about this particular story is compared to many, many of the others is they actually have a indication of how it happened. And so this one, from the type of data that was breached, this is also a little more serious than a lot we've seen. It included not only like the normal contact information, but it also included copies of your passports. So that's pretty bad. Bleeping Computer, through some means, I'm going to guess because they have a line to the attacker, learned that the threat actor breached WestJet using social engineering to reset a WestJet employee's password and get access to WestJet's network through a external Citrix portal. And then that in turn allowed the attackers to move laterally inside the Windows network inside WestJet. So, it's such a simple thing, right? We've talked about this a lot, And we have seen, I think it feels like in the past 6 months, we've talked about 3 or 4 or 5 pretty high profile instances where the help desk or outsourced help desk of a company has been successfully social engineered into changing passwords or creating accounts or what have you. And so I think this is just another reminder that, like, once again, the basics are super important here, right? Like this isn't something that your EDR or your anomaly detection baloney is going to catch. Like, this is somebody is going to be coming in using a legitimate account. Now, perhaps you might notice that the origin is different than the login origin is different than what this person normally connects from. But that can even be mitigated by using proxies. So you might not get the same, like you might not land in the same place, but like I have Proton VPN. I can set my endpoint to be like in hundreds of different cities across the world. And so that's not a complicated thing for an attacker to make make it look like they're coming from an IP address in Montreal or whatever.
Right. Yeah, it's the basics. You know what's interesting? At least I think so. One of my vendors that I work with has forced, it's a SaaS vendor, it's a security tool. They are forcing you to adopt some sort of multi-factor login with a lot more controls around the login. They are getting rid of any sort of single factor login, which they're like, you don't have a choice. You have until this date to migrate. So either use your own SSO provider, enable one of these MFA options, set up, these controls, or you're going to be locked out. So I kind of applaud them for that. And I wonder if more vendors might have to go down that route. It's just, sorry, I know we don't know for a fact that this is a single factor login, but it certainly wasn't phishing resistant.
No, I mean, they could have also somehow fooled the help desk into providing a temporary
two
factor. It's hard to say exactly what happened,
right. But nonetheless, I wonder.
Social engineering.
I'm starting to wonder if we're getting to a point in the industry where a number of vendors are just not going to give us the option to do single factor or phishing susceptible logins anymore, just out of their own self-preservation of their reputation.
I think they're going to have to. I think it's coming. It's just a matter of what it takes to get everybody there.
Yeah. Which sucks, right? I don't want anybody to be forced to do anything, but so many companies just don't do this. Yeah, I don't know. There's a thought I'm not articulating well, but I don't like forcing companies to have to do certain things. It's like there was always this debate of, if you know somebody's vulnerable and there's a widespread attack going on, is it ethically appropriate to hack into them and patch them against their will to save other people? It's like, I always have struggles with that, but this feels like that sort of like, hey, we're going to take away insecure options because you can't be trusted. But maybe we're getting there.
Well, I mean, if you have a relationship, like you're a vendor or they're a customer, you have some stake in it, right? So it's not like it's not entirely like you're just trying to impose your will on them. Like you're doing it for self-preservation in some regards.
That's true.
I think this was something that we went through at the cloud. Like, it's a pain in the ass. Onboarding customers is a big priority, and everything you do to make that more complicated, to log in, adds friction to the process, and that is unpopular. But on the other hand, it's also true, as we've seen damn near everywhere. People are running these password stuffing attacks, and then you end up with customer accounts getting compromised and running up, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 bills. And, at what point do you say, well, you know what? Enough. Everybody's got to use two-factor. It's just the way it is. And so I think that's what we're going to see more of, because, it's not being paternalistic for being paternalistic's sake. I think it's just a matter of maintaining your reputation.
Yeah. It goes back to the same thing we were talking about, kind of like with the package repos. That,
Yeah, exactly.
and
GitHub,
Salesforce right now. Salesforce is getting hit, and we've got some articles talking about that. And obviously, I'm in the middle of one of those situations that I can't talk to details of, but Salesforce is just getting their reputation trashed very badly by all these hacks that aren't necessarily hacks against them, but their data is being impacted and they're getting drug in the middle of it, and they're suffering reputational damage as a result, and now potentially lawsuits. So we'll get to that. Carry on.
All right. Next story comes from Cybersecurity Dive, and the title here is Many Material Cybersecurity Breaches Go Unreported. And that's according to this company called Viking Cloud, who I've never heard of before. But hey, I'm never one to ignore something novel like this. I've never seen any data about this, but
so you're saying clickbait works on Jerry?
It does. It really does. So one of the highlights in the report is that nearly half, or 48% of cybersecurity leaders, which they define as director level or above, did not report a material cybersecurity incident to their executive leadership or board in the past year.
And they're implying did not report when they should have, not just didn't report because it didn't happen.
When they should have, right.
Yeah.
That's a good call out.
Because it's oddly worded. I read that a few times. What are you? So, yes.
Yeah. So, and I don't know if that's like 48% of leaders who had a breach or 48% of everybody they surveyed, which was a small survey. I think it was 200 people. So it's not like some expansive thing, but I can kind of understand this. Like we've seen this materialize itself in the past to a certain extent. The Uber case was this. I mean, there were other factors in the Uber case. I think I'm drawing a blank with. I know there were a few others, and it's this sort of thing, by the way, that is one of the, at least here in the U.S., is one of the biggest problems that you'll run into in terms of personal liability. There are not a huge amount of things that you can do in the context of being an employee at a company that's going to get you in trouble, but hiding a breach is definitely one of them.
I think SolarWinds is the other big one that people think about.
Yeah, true. Well, I think SolarWinds was, I think that the CISO there is getting zapped because he was out making assertions about the level of security of SolarWinds processes. But anyway, there's lots of cases out there. Just can't put my finger on one at the moment, other than Uber. But again, this is a big thing, and we've seen this kind of vacillation back and forth between putting more teeth into regulations and laws that prescribe when a CISO has to report a breach, and to the point where now we're seeing, like, I don't remember if it made it into a law or not, but there was at least at one point a prospective law that would have mandated CISOs to report breaches to the government here in the U.S. under certain circumstances. And then that would put them at odds with their own company, who obviously wants to have a chance to do an investigation and whatnot before that gets reported. So it kind of creates a tough situation, but I would say that, if you are in that kind of leadership position, you've got, it can be uncomfortable. And it might mean that you end up getting fired, but at the end of the day, like, the only thing we have is our reputation. And if the company is going to bury you because you're reporting something that actually happened, that's not a great place to be. Anyhow, I mean, they call that out, by the way. Like, one of the hypothesized reasons for this finding was that people are so paranoid about getting fired that they don't want to rock the boat.
Yeah, in fact, it's right in the summary at the top. The leading reasons cited for not reporting were worry over punitive rather than constructive response from leadership and the board, and fear of financial or reputational harm if the incident were made public or resulted in regulatory.
There you go.
The tough part is with these reporting mandates, there's a couple of keywords here, like material cybersecurity incident. So first of all, can you define material for your organization? Do you have that defined? Do you know what that is? That's a legal term. Has your legal organization told you what that means? Also, early on in a breach, there's a massive fog of war that you may not know if it's material or not. And you may not know for some time as you're investigating, especially if you're trying to investigate it properly and understand the scope and really do the forensic. There's this belief that you just have perfect fidelity of knowledge immediately after you discover a breach, and that is not true. There's usually a ton of conflicting information. And then when a breach starts to go public, or you start to disclose, then you usually get inundated with a ton of unrelated suspicions from third parties who, oh, is this related to your breach? And you go running all that stuff down and you don't know if it's related or not. So knowing the full scope accurately is really hard in the first hours and days of a breach. And this is like, what is it? China has a 4-hour reporting requirement. That's like, I guess in certain seconds you say, hey, the reporting requirement may just be, hey, we're investigating something. And I get that, but I don't know that most people haven't been intimately involved in these situations to realize how just confusing and difficult, and the term I use over again is the fog of war around incident response early on. And you get how frustrated people are. They're not getting information faster, better, whatever, but it's very confusing early in a breach.
Yeah. I would say one of the other challenges is perhaps a little more pragmatic. And that is, I'm going to struggle to convey this well, but leadership of companies want to help when there's a breach.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, they do.
And their help is often not very helpful. And so, there's it's not just this, oh, well, I might get fired, or, it's not a big deal. It's also, I can imagine, because again, I've seen, and you've seen it too, like the amount of focus, at least in responsible companies. So like, it would be concerning if a company's leadership just said, well, whatever, like breach happened, whatever. That would be concerning too. But if you are responsible for managing security incidents like that, it's a big hassle, because not only do you have to manage the incident, but you have to manage this endless parade of executives who have their own ideas on what happened or what you should do.
Just do something. Why isn't this fixed yet?
Right.
This customer is very important. Blah, blah, blah.
Just change the password and put it back out. It's fine. So anyway, I think that's probably part of it too.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say is, once you say something publicly, you can't unsay it. So you want to get it right.
Yeah.
And
one thing that has been interesting is ransomware. I think this has been a problem for a long time. And I think a lot of companies are, unless they're compelled to report, I don't think they do. And I think ransomware has been something that's changed the calculus, as it has in many different venues. Your breach is public now. It's not something that you control. The ransomware actor is typically running around peacocking that they've hacked you and they're offering your data for sale, and they're trying to shame you because they want to get paid. And so everybody knows that you got hacked. But obviously, ransomware isn't the only kind of incident that happens. The other thing that I'll go back to is something you said, which is the definition of what's material is super squishy. It's in the context of a public company here in the U.S., it's intended to loosely refer to something that would have an impact on your earnings statement, on your quarterly earnings statement, because you have an obligation to inform your investors on things that could impact their investment. And so that's why the SEC kind of gets all up in your business if you're not reporting incidents correctly. But the issue here is that these security leaders are saying they're not even reporting it up to other people in their company. And so they're not even giving the company a chance to make the decision on whether or not they should report it to other authorities. So anyway, I would just say, if you're in that position, you've really got to establish working relationship with your company's leadership to make this not be a problem, because this is one of the things that's could come back and hurt you personally. Anyway,
I would agree.
Moving on to our next story. This one is from Security Week, and the title here is Red Hat confirms GitLab instance hack data theft.
Speaking of repos.
So, yes, it's unclear, by the way, exactly how this happened. There was some confusion that originally it was reported that it was a GitHub repos, but it's actually GitLab repos, which, this is my old stomping ground. So the thing that is baffling to me was the data was like 570 gigs of data from 28,000 repositories stored in this GitLab instance. And I struggled when I was in that role. Now, I wasn't part of Red Hat, but was in Big Blue. We had a lot of repos, but nowhere near 28,000.
Well, this was their consulting group too. So what,
right.
It makes me think, yeah, go ahead.
I guess my where I was going was that the logistics of and the potential for things going wrong when you're managing that many repositories is pretty big. And that was what I wanted to say about that.
I'm imagining they're like, for every consulting project they do, maybe they create 10 repos or whatever, and that's just how they organize and store things, and then it just becomes this big mess. And I'll bet you money they also were doing this kind of on their own without any sort of other security oversight or IT oversight, as the consulting group out, they're revenue generating, so they need their own tooling to go do what they need to do.
Why would they wait for the business to provide them a tool when they can go invent one on their own? By the way, I have no idea if that's what happened or not, but it's
no, me either. But
not hard to think.
I've seen it before. This is something that can start as shadow IT and become a whole data disclosure nightmare in this circumstance.
Yes.
Very easily. And, I have no idea if that's what happened here, but I've seen this thing play out exactly like that other places. And they're like, wait, you were doing what? Well, we needed to go do something. So we just, we went and found GitLab to do this, and we've been doing it like this for 4 years, and it works for us. Okay, but what?
Surprise.
Yeah. And that happens all the time. So, especially if you're revenue generating like consulting,
mm-hmm.
those leaders have a lot of authority to just go do their own thing and their own budgets, and are not held very accountable to this if they're making their numbers. So this is where shadow IT and shadow SaaS and shadow AI can really bite a company if you're not.
Yeah, so these repositories apparently contained a mix of source code, credentials, secrets, configurations, and other what they call customer engagement reports, which I think is like metadata about the customer engagement. And the attacker here is also claiming that they have used what they stole to gain access to some of the Red Hat customers' infrastructure. Now, Red Hat is not commenting on that. They don't know. The other thing that was, it's not stated in this article, because there's been like 30 articles I've seen written about this one. I tried to pick the best one, but another one indicated that the attacker here actually apparently tried to ransom, like they tried to send a ransom to Red Hat, but the place they sent it to, they just got a stock automated email response, and they never got contacted. And so apparently the threat actor here just went public. And I will say, because I know the people, and a lot of the people are still there, if the people were made aware of this happening, they would have been all over it. And I just have to believe there's, in a company that large, there's lots of opportunity for process failure. So I think that's probably what happened. I will also hypothesize, because that's what thought leaders do, that GitLab has had a whole bunch of really serious vulnerabilities recently. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm talking at my rear end here. I don't have any idea if this is what happened, but that was something that I was always concerned about, because GitLab is kind of a complicated thing to host. Mm-hmm. And when you are a customer when you are using GitLab as a like a hosted customer, there's usually like this complicated upgrade dance you have to do. You can't upgrade it yourself, but your hosting provider isn't going to upgrade it for you until you tell them you want to, because it will break things. Like there's often breaking changes. It's kind of like Kubernetes. Kubernetes was like in the cloud world, that was the thing I hated the most, because every version which happened often every couple months had breaking changes. And so it was like the process to upgrade required your customers to make changes in their infrastructure and then coordinate the upgrade with you. And it was a titanic pain in the ass.
Yeah, which means people just don't upgrade.
Right. And so it was always a fight, because like you don't want to run and be responsible for stuff that's old and vulnerable. But on the other hand, if you upgrade it, they're going to be broken. It's a mess. Anyway, I don't know if that's what happened, but there has been a bunch of really serious GitLab vulnerabilities recently. It's not hard to think that somehow, some way, a GitLab instance in a company that size may have been overlooked. I don't know, but there's no better explanation on what happened so far. Anyway, I would just go back to saying, like, this is one thing that I have observed. I'm not going to say where. You can draw your own conclusions. Like, your repos don't need to be public. Like, they don't, I mean, by public, I mean like accessible from the internet. Like, they don't need to be accessible from the internet. Like, I understand that it can be convenient, right? I understand that
you're just an old fuddy-duddy Luddite who just doesn't understand.
I know, zero trust. But God damn it. Why do people think zero trust helps when you've got breaking vulnerabilities like this? And
because authentication authorization code is perfect. It never has a problem.
There's never any authentication bypasses or remote code execution vulnerabilities.
Look, you wanted me to put a password on it. I put a password on it. Stop bothering me.
Anyway, so my best advice is, number one, make sure if you're using GitLab, make sure, or self-hosted GitHub, make sure you are staying on top of updates, because they do come in hot and fast. And then also, if you have the opportunity to, don't expose it to the internet. Like,
you know what else comes in hot and fast?
I can't imagine what you're going to say.
And cats.
They do. I almost got a video of Noki fighting with my dog yesterday. That was
what did you think I was going to say? I would never disparage such a lovely woman.
Clutch your pearls. All right. The next story comes from Security Week, and the title here is "Hackers Extorting Salesforce After Stealing Data from Dozens of Customers." So there's
usual caveat. I have to be careful about what I say here, but this story just keeps getting more interesting.
Yeah. So
I'm in the middle of some of this. Sorry.
So, the Fozzie Bear Lapsus Scattered Shiny Hunters, or whatever they're called this week, has issued, I think it's 39, if I'm not mistaken, that they've sent ransom notes to 39 entities that have had their data stolen through one of the recent Salesforce breach campaigns. Not necessarily yours, by the way, because there's been a bunch. And
give it a few days.
Been like a billion records have been stolen, but they've also, by the way, levied a ransom on Salesforce directly. And they are saying to Salesforce, if you, Salesforce, can pay a ransom and it'll go away for everybody.
So they put up a website with 39 organizations that they're targeting right now with bits of data. And they're saying, they're going to post more if somebody doesn't pay them.
Right. So each individual company can pay to keep their own data private, or Salesforce can pay, I assume, a much larger fee and keep all of the data private. Now, there was a tangent that I saw just before we recorded this, and I sent it to you. I didn't put it in the show, but recall PowerSchool. So PowerSchool got hacked by this same actor a while ago, and I think it was a Snowflake breach, if I'm not mistaken. They're all kind of blending together. But anyway, PowerSchool paid the ransom, and one of the stipulations in that ransom payment was that they would never get any of their data exposed ever. And so apparently PowerSchool is one of the companies that is impacted by this. And initially this group was going to release PowerSchool's data, and PowerSchool apparently contacted them and said, "Hey, I thought we had a deal." And they said,
Right.
"Oh, you're right. You know what? We're going to make it up to you." And they're going to refund some of the payment for screwing up. So,
which, hey, that's good customer service all around.
That's good customer service. Like, it just tells you always keep your receipt.
Right. And
contracts are important.
It's kind of like a frequent customer punch card. Like every fifth ransom is free, but in this case, no. All of it, one and done.
So the other, go ahead.
So I don't know if you're going to say this, but so they put this up. This is allegedly what they've gotten through their social engineering campaigns against Salesforce. They're saying this isn't what they got through Drift, SalesLoft, OAuth tokens. So they're saying they're going to put up another site on October 10th with those victims. But if the victims are in both sets of data, they only have to pay for one of them, which will cover both potential exposures, I guess. Or Salesforce can pay and make it all go away, apparently. So says the media. Everything I'm saying is in the media. I'm just reporting the news. Nothing confidential. Please don't sue me.
Now, as you mentioned, there are, and I think we talked about this on last week's show, there are already lawsuits headed towards Salesforce about a string of breaches, right? There's been quite a few this year. And one of the statements of this threat actor here says that they will collaborate with plaintiffs in their lawsuits against Salesforce.
That's wild to me.
Unless Salesforce agrees to pay the threat actor directly.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of different versions of this particular story and different quotes from Shiny Hunters attributed to them, basically just calling Salesforce out directly for what Shiny Hunters says is terrible security and that they're doing this to help Salesforce customers. I'm like, oh, it's an interesting way of looking at things. But so, yeah, they're like, hey, their position on this seems to be that Salesforce is negligent in the way they run things, and we're going to help you sue them by releasing exactly how we did this so you can use it in your lawsuit against Salesforce. Which I don't know that we've seen a threat actor make this offer before.
I don't recall seeing anything like that. So this is like the quadruple extortion, right?
Well, then can they charge a fee as an expert witness?
They do like to monetize it, so maybe. Again,
I have to be careful what I say because I'm in the middle of this, but wow, is this getting wild?
Yeah. So anyway, they're obviously trying to put maximum pressure on Salesforce, right? They're trying, my words, right? My perspective. They are using the threat against each of the individual Salesforce customers as more leverage to make Salesforce more likely to pay. And then they're also saying, oh, and by the way, if you don't pay us, we're going to help your customers in their lawsuits against you.
Now, Salesforce's position on this is that it has no indication that its platform might have been hacked, that the group's claims do not appear related to vulnerabilities in its platform. Quote, we are aware of recent extortion attempts by threat actors, which we have investigated in partnership with external experts and authorities. Our findings indicate these attempts relate to past or unsubstantiated incidents, and we remain engaged with affected customers to provide support, Salesforce said. So their position is pound sand.
Yeah, I mean it's not unlike what we saw with Microsoft and with Snowflake and others. Microsoft I guess is a bad example. Snowflake in particular, I suppose. They're basically saying like we didn't get hacked. Our systems, there was no vulnerability exploited. None of our systems were caught. Excuse me. It was was the behavior of our customers is what caused the problem. But, times 1,000, it starts to become, maybe you do have some obligation. And I suppose that's going to be borne out in court. Like, I don't know. I don't know how that's going to play out in court. I have no idea. A year ago, I would have said, "Yep, I have a good idea," but today, no idea.
It will be interesting. I don't feel it'd be appropriate for me to have any opinion on that publicly at this point, but it's a very new and different tactic from these threat hunters. If you look at Google does not attribute at the moment the SalesLoft hack to this group. They think it's a different. Well, they're tracking it as a separate group. So who knows? Like, these folks are not above lying. It's possible that, who knows? So much stuff gets traded back and forth and sold back and forth that it's very possible that they did go buy some different leaks and assemble them and are saying this is some new centralized. The point is, it's tough to know what's real, and these folks are known to lie at times. But if they start releasing very detailed technical information in support of someone's lawsuit, if that actually comes to pass, that will be fascinating to see what they release, if they do release it.
Yeah.
And if it's accurate, right?
Absolutely. So the last story is related to this, and I thought it was worth, it was kind of like the dog on the skateboard kind of story. It was related to this. So Qantas Airways, which is based out of Australia, they were one of the victims in one of these hacks. They've been put on notice that their data is going to be disclosed. So they took a very novel approach to this. They went to the local court system in Australia, and they had the court effectively issue a gag order, which they delivered to the threat actor here, this shiny, whatever, scattered lapses, shiny hunters.
I'm sure that they chuckled a lot.
Yes. So they delivered this court order that basically prohibits the dissemination of this data, stolen data, to the public. It's basically like a confidentiality order, and they sent it to the email addresses and contact information of the threat actor that they were given, I suppose, in terms of like coordinating payment. Qantas is, as we talked about in the last story, one of the 39 that are up for imminent disclosure. And so they've basically said, screw you. Now, it was also very interesting, it's subtle in the story, but the court agreed to keep the identities of the legal counsel representing Qantas private because they're afraid that this threat actor is going to go after those lawyers personally. I thought that was also quite interesting.
There's one other interesting aspect, which is that it basically is a gag order on Australian media from reporting anything about this.
Ah, interesting. I didn't pick that up. That's very interesting.
So the Qantas injunction prevents the stolen data being accessed, viewed, used, transmitted, or published by anyone, including third parties. The affected persons can therefore prevent news organizations and online platforms, for example, from broadcasting material further.
So basically they can then use that. If somebody publishes it, they can use that to go and have it taken down.
Yeah. So that may be somewhat effective in Australia against their own media, but I mean, how in the world would this even be enforceable against, Russian, Eastern European, Chinese-based threat actors? That's my assumption. Although, didn't they just arrest somebody in the UK? So
they did.
Yeah,
they did.
So anyway,
yeah. By the way, there's been quite a few people that were part of this threat actor who have been arrested, and actually, I don't know for sure. I think that one of the reasons that they've kind of amalgamated from these three separate threat actors into one, which is why the name is so funny. I think it's because they've had quite a few people that were part of the individual groups arrested over the past 2 years or so. So there's, as far as I could tell, there were quite a lot of people involved in the operation, and there's been a non-trivial number arrested. Yet they persist.
Nevertheless, they persist.
Anyway, I thought it was a very novel approach to trying to get a court order to ensure, to demand that your ransomware actor not release the information.
We have yet to actually get any court orders issued against us. That's how I know we've made it big, is when somebody issues us a gag order.
So there was one other, and it's not part of this. It's a hypothetical that came to mind. What is the possibility that somebody like Qantas, or perhaps multiple victims here, file a lawsuit to compel Salesforce to pay the ransom?
I don't know. I think this would be new territory for the court. I have no idea, but I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah. That'd be fascinating.
I think this would be a decade of legal battles.
Yeah. Anyway, it'd be very interesting to see. I don't think Salesforce is likely to pay the ransom. They definitely don't seem to think this is their, anything on that's their fault. Although, to their credit, by the way, they have, as we talked about, I think last show, they've started implementing some enhanced security around, that will hopefully reduce the likelihood of this happening. But I mean, look, we've talked a lot about this issue for the last couple of weeks, and I think it's super important for people who are Salesforce customers to take this seriously. Like, if you're a partner, if you're a customer, especially if you're a customer who's relying on a partner, like, pay attention to this. There are things that you can do. Go back and look at the notes from episode 324. There's some really good ideas on what you can do to help protect yourself, but like, take this seriously. This is no joke.
Indeed. And I would say more, but hopefully in the future.
A couple of years once the statute of limitations expires. Anyway, that is the show for this week. I hope this was interesting, entertaining, probably not informative.
Mildly distracting from the ongoing existential dread of society and existence. Any of those is fine. Exactly.
Anyway, I certainly appreciate your attention, and another thank you to our Patreon sponsors. Also, a reminder that you can watch our podcast here on YouTube. You just go to YouTube and search for Defensive Security Podcast. We'll also drop a link to it in our show notes. In the meantime, where can people find you on social media if they want to bug you?
I am on your amazing Mastodon instance at infosec.exchange and on X with the same handle, Lurg.
Awesome. And you can find me on infosec.exchange at Jerry. And with that, I bid you adieu, and we'll talk again next week. Thank you.
Have a great week. Bye-bye.